There we go. You're ready when you are.
I'm ready. Oh, I hear footsteps. Yes, they're good. Bathroom. Okay.
Okay, go ahead. We're recording.
Oh, sorry. I'm ready. Okay, so here is the last edition of our webinars. It is on tearing up and tearing down foundations for literacy. So I know that a lot of times, like throughout my coaching and throughout the different workshops we do, we hear the same thing where people don't have enough time or they don't feel like the material necessarily suits their needs. So that's what we're going to address during this webinar. So you go ahead and go to the next slide, where I've listed the different websites. And the one I'll be talking about today that I'm going to be referencing is the private website. Sometimes that link doesn't work. When I tried to use it on my computer, it didn't. So if you just go to the regular public website and then from there click the link to be added to the private one, you can either, if you already have your password, you can get on that way, or if you don't, you can set your password up. Next slide. Issue number 1. My students are too high for this material. We have people come in and they're like, they don't need to learn, X, Y, and Z, like they're way past that. And what we say about that is that this is no longer in the research years. So you have, free will to manipulate these materials to best suit your needs for your kids. So tier it up if it's too low for them. I've got some tips on the next slide. I'm going to go to the next slide. An easy way to tier up is to just ignore the target vocabulary cards. Like if they already know those words or they know most of, skip them. Go ahead and go with your challenge word cards. They make it a little bit more difficult. Play games. There's easy ways to incorporate different games. Like two of my favorites were during the rhyming times, I would use those to play memory. So if there's gate and skate, that would be a rhyming pair. They got to keep it. So we would play Go Fish a lot of times with like a word bank, or we would do memory where they would actually flip them, but making sure that they do say the 2 words each time. Like a lot of times kids want to flip it and be like, nope. Then I don't let them just say nope. Like they have to say, skate, gate. Yes, that's a match. Or skate, shoe. No, that's not a match. They don't rhyme. Another easy way is to use initial sound searches. So for instance, like one of them, if they're looking for a blue bow, instead of using blue bow or whatever it is, the word sound. So to have the internet connection issue.
Yeah, you may have to repeat that.
Okay. What I was saying is that instead of doing a color like looking for a blue marker, that you could highlight the initial sound of marker. So you're looking for an be looking around the room or have a closed set. So that way, instead of working on the color word, you're working on the actual vocabulary word for marker. Those are just 2 quick games.
Well, I was also thinking about memory. I know some of our participants have gone through Fairview, and one of the things she does when she plays memory with them is she has them prove it every time of whether or not they're a match or not a match. So she just gets them in the routine that every time they're flipping cards over, they have to prove it. And the other thing I was thinking about when you were talking about—
there has to be an explanation.
Yeah, is, even though you think this may be too hard, our students so often have that Swiss cheese knowledge.
Oh, yeah.
Surprised when they have that little bit of missing knowledge. So it's always good to pre-test and find out where it is and then spend a little bit more time on those little pieces of information that they are missing to bulk up and get that complete knowledge on that particular topic.
I mean, definitely. I mean, I work with mostly 1st, 2nd, and 3rd grade right now. Yeah. And like hearing kids, and like one of our big things is just explaining, like it's like the why, and even having them, and if they're at the point, like if they're talking in complete sentences, we want answers and explanations in complete sentences. So that way, however they're say it, that's how I want them to also write it.
Right. Exactly.
Someone popping in? Okay, next slide. This is one of my big things. I add movement to every lesson. You know, there's been lots of research studies that show that, you know, increasing the movement and adding movement with either segments of an activity or within the activity itself increases the learning. Like it turns their brain on, they're ready to go. So examples I have there's rhyme activities. I used to, let's see, I can't see because I got the pictures hanging over there. Okay, I'd hand student one card. So say I gave them the card for box, and then I'd place all the other rhyming cards on the other side of the room, and they would have to flip a card over where I'd have pictures of different movement activities like bear walk, crab walk, you know, duck walk, hop, all kinds of different verbs and movement activities. And they'd have to flip a card, you know, say it said crab walk, and they would have to take their box card, crab walk to the other side of the room and find whichever card matched box. And then they could run it back. But it's like getting that extra bit of movement. I mean, even with my older kids, made them so much happier, and they would do any rhyme activity if it meant they got to get some movement in the room. Another one that I had was keyword and high frequency word reading. I would, after 3 to 5 words, when you're doing any kind of drill, you want there to be incentive for them to keep going. So after 3 to 5 words, I would give them a beanbag to throw into a box on the other side of the room. I mean, it sounds totally lame, but honestly, giving a kid a chance to like throw something in an appropriate manner gets them super excited. So whether it's a beanbag in a box, or it's those like sticky hands or sticky things that you can like fling on the back of like a door or to a window. I mean, I'm not kidding. They will do whatever you want them to do if they get to throw something. Other examples, I went to Learning Press and I bought, it's like about this size. It's kind of like a dartboard, but it's one you can hold. And it has these like little suction cup darts. So like they would fling those back and forth. So like we do a rhyming activity where say they said box, and then they throw the dart onto the suction board, and they'd have to like rhyme it. So they'd have to say fox, and then they'd take it and they'd say one of the words, and the other one would have to hit it back and rhyme it. Other examples, small basketball into a behind the door goal. I mean, anything that involves throwing, they're going to love it. And they're ready for the next lesson. Because a lot of these activities, they're going from a table to a floor, and even that, Kareth. Sorry, my dog is starting a fight with the other dog. Kareth. Hey. Stop. Hold on. Stop. Stop. Hold on. We'll see if that stops them. Okay. Oh, we can go to the next slide. I don't have to smack a dog. Tearing up tips. So these are some of my tips. You know, I have a tendency to say older kids, but a lot of our younger kids, honestly, have more expressive language than our olders. But kids with higher language, using the vocabulary and keyword cards in other ways. So I used to use them for, like, say, making the plan. So when you're making your plan, like when you're going to make your chocolate pudding pie, then you're going to use those picture cards for word retrieval. So during the plan, you would provide the picture to help facilitate. Like maybe they're having a hard time thinking of, you know, when they're doing ice cream sundaes, an ice cream scooper. So you would be able to show them the picture to help with the word retrieval. Another idea, like when you're making the plan and doing recall activities, use them as visual cues or clues. So that way, like when you're writing it up, instead of using, like, you know, writing the word, a lot of times I would like post the picture there. Or a lot of times when we're writing out the plan or writing out a story or recall, I would box in words that were like high frequency words. So we might have picture cards for vocabulary targets. I might highlight with a box around the ones that they should be able to read because it's a high frequency word card. And then I might circle in a different color decodables. Okay, next slide. The dogs have calmed down. Tips again. This goes along with recall and retell. So a lot of times I like to try and give the kids ownership over their stories, even if they're retelling a story. If they're retelling it in their own language, in their own words, I like to have them think up a title. I list them as authors of the retell. Again, it gives them ownership and hits state standards when you're talking about author, illustrator, titles. They can draw a picture to go along with their story. They can also be super creative and give alternate endings. I do this a lot of times with my kids, like when we finish our book of the week, then a lot of times I'll let them write an alternate ending. So, maybe Coco didn't get the haircut. What could have happened to Coco at the end? Like, do it as an extension. Obviously, you need to go through the story, but then you can kind of change it up and make it funny for them. And that way it incorporates writing standards and kind of you get more bang for your buck. And again, I also said draw pictures for the extension. Let them be the next slide. Some tiering up tips for sight and keyword blending. You want to make sight and keyword bingo boards. So you could do, and a lot of times with this, I'll do pictures and words, and then I'll alternate the different ones that I'm flipping over. So it might be that they're working for the print or the picture. Drills can get boring, so a lot of times I also play memory. Again, we do this with the other. Sorry, hold on 1 second. Yes.
Why don't you buy the flash game?
Yeah, no. I would play memory, so we match up with the print with picture. So again, if you were playing a picture, playing a memory game with some of your challenge words, then you might have some of the words that are in print, some with picture. So that way when they're flipping it over, they're having to think a little bit harder. They're having to think which picture is going to match up with the print. They're not just looking solely at graphemes that match. Next slide. Okay, another thing that I always hear, okay, if they're not too high for the material, then they're too low for the material. So now what? Well, again, out of the research years, you don't have to worry about all the different things we had to hit during those years. So you can tear it down. You can use the manual just as a guideline. You can manipulate materials to suit your needs. And I've got some examples of this on the next couple slides. Next slide. One thing that I would do is box guessing. During that time, it could be that you give them a closed set. So an example, if you're passing a bag around that has whipped cream inside of it, like when you're doing the ice cream sundaes, you're going to talk about what you do with the object. And if they don't have a guess right away, again, you're going to show them the whipped cream. My interconnection just went unstable again. We're having issues today. I'm sorry. If it's not the dog, the kid, or the computer, we'll see what else can possibly happen. Okay. So then I would pull out with the cherries and the spoons and have them feel that container and decide does that feel like it would be a spoon? Which one of these three closed set pictures is going to be cold, and see if they can guess it from that. And whenever I'm doing that with really low level learners, I want to make sure that the picture cards are very different, versus having milk along with the whipped cream along with the ice cream. All of those are cold. All of those you can eat. So you want to keep them very, you can kind of scale them easier to harder, whatever your child needs. Next slide.
Trying to unmute my audio.
Yeah.
And I was just thinking here, giving them the experience, more than once may have to happen before they're ready to work on some of these things, and really going through and taking your time with explaining to them what these different things are and giving them the language and lots of practice before you even start doing the guessing game. Sometimes they need that extra help and extra practice and experience with those materials.
Right. And if you're working with little kids, in the kitchen, maybe that week you put items that we'd use for ice cream sundaes over there. So they've already been playing with it, and it kind of leads into it. It's going to come down, for me to make slides for everything would be days long. So you really have to get a feel for who your kids are that year. And once you have it figured out, that next year you're going to have totally different kids. And then you're going to have to tier it up. And then next year you're going to have to tear it down. And then you might have a year where it's perfect. You might have a year where, you have one set of kids you can keep together the whole time. It literally, that's part of the beauty of the program and the curriculum, is that all the material is there for you to manipulate. You have the USB, you're the driver of all the material. So you can scale it up, scale it down, keep it how it is, whatever reaches your kids. Another example of tiering down, again with retail, I would use a fill in the blank approach with closed set options. So for example, one sunny day, Miss Giggle took Pete, Kate, and Sue to and you give them the expectant look, that we always give, while holding 2 or 3 of the picture cards. So you're kind of like giving them that, expectant look, like, okay, now's your time to pick one. Another example is with recall. You can do the same type thing with closed set of story sequence cards, or if it's pictures that you took when they actually did an activity like making the sundaes or making the pudding pie. You're going to ask, what happened next? And you're going to have choices for them. So again, it's just, instead of having just an open set that can pull from anywhere, you're giving them options. You can also, I used to do this with some of my groups because I taught this for, I think, 5 years at speech school, and then, the workshops and times after that. But there were groups that I would pre-write phrases and short sentences. So I'll have, first, I already have this written. First, we got 6, and then there's 2 choices, bowls or spoons for them. So, what did we do first? So that way, they're still joining in with the recall, but you're scaling it down to where you're not taking the time to like necessarily elicit a lot of language and then write it. It's already pre-written, and they give you choices. And then, of course, you would read it back to them when you have it completed. Okay, next slide. This is my biggest one. This goes out to all you itinerant teachers. I don't have time. So what I did is I heard that over and over, and it was actually at the workshop that Stacy and I did in Florida, that we were sitting at the hotel, and I was like, you know what? I was like, write Amy and find out if, we have a budget pretty much for me to rewrite this whole thing into 30-minute segments. And so that's what I did. I literally took all of the lessons and units and wrote them to try and get the meat of it without leaving anything out that was super, super duper important, to make everything fit into like a 25 to 30-minute time frame. So I changed the materials and activities to make it easier for itinerant teachers that might not necessarily have a permanent room and might be, working with suitcases and like little pulley things where they have they're pulling the materials around them everywhere. So that's what I kind of changed some of the materials to help with. Are you pulling up the link? Yeah. That's what I did. I think it's like 40-something pages for you. So again, literally, I went ahead and did like the first units. Like if your kids are really needing that, then that's pretty important, because the first 6 before we get into nitty gritty is setting the foundation, setting the base for them. But I still kind of took it kind of going for with these shorter lessons, or kids that might be older that don't need a lot of the sing-songy cutesy stuff, and can get more to just what they're really needing to learn to read. So next slide. What changed?
Well, I just was going to throw in there that I did post that document in the base camp for everyone that participated, so they can go and download it and don't have to search for it. And I posted it with the link for the announcement for today's training.
What changed? Few songs and poems. There's still some in there if they're super important. And my connection's going unstable again. I'm back. Okay, so I kind of cut down as many songs and poems. You have to keep, any kind of keyword activity, retail, recall. And there's certain things that we've talked about in the workshops where you can't deviate from it. Obviously you're going to have to introduce the word in an activity before you do the decoding and before you do the blending. So that stuff you have to keep. I kind of whittled down the practice time activities maybe to focus on one activity each time. And I changed some of the more cutesy games and animal songs to go more towards older kids who don't necessarily want to walk around beating a pie plate drum. Okay, next slide. This is one of my big things, is you need to get a baseline. So if you're having some kids come in and you're using this as a remedial tool, and because the program's focused on kids age 4 to 7. So say you have 7, 8 years old and they're coming in, get a baseline on them. You might not need to even do the first 6, 7, 8 units. If they have a foundation of skills where it comes, they know what it means to take things apart and put things together, and you just need to introduce them to the characters, then do that first progress monitoring and use it as a baseline. That way you'll see if there's any gaps you need to fill in. Just checking my stuff. Yeah, so as long as they're knowing the character names, it might be that you can jump ahead to like units 7 or 8. Next slide. And this is an example. So I was trying to do, I gave 3 different examples of how I rewrote these. So this one's from Unit 3, Lesson 12. So obviously this is, in the beginning. So for example, we still do the box. They're going to find the booklets in the box. You're going to read the booklets together and ask distancing questions. This is one thing. I added a lot of distancing questions, which we talked about as decontextualized language. So it's stuff that's not happening in the here and now. So like, have any of you been to a farm? This is higher, even though it doesn't seem like it, it is higher level, more complex thought to think about something that happened in the past or something that happens in the future. So you're going to ask me, what did you see? What did you hear? Then you're going to do, it used to be called look and listens, and now that's pretty much any kind of language activity. But I have, placing a farm puzzle pieces upside down on the table. So maybe you don't have enough space. If you're going back and forth as an itinerant, maybe you don't have space to have a box of farm animals, but you could carry a farm puzzle. So that's kind of where I was going with this. Like I was scaling down the amount of materials you need by just having the puzzle with those pieces face down. You're going to gather different items, and you're going to take turns clapping out the item names. Point to its corresponding number card. Let them take a puzzle piece for each word part. When all the puzzle pieces have been earned, then you can put the puzzle together. So as they work on it, they're making the correlation of the pieces, making a whole picture, just as the word parts make a whole word. So again, so every little bit of work they do, they're earning something, but then it's going to become a whole piece. And then the practice time piece I chose for that day was vocabulary bingo. And so all in all, if you set a little timer, you're about a 30-minute lesson. Next slide. Okay, so this one I jumped ahead to Unit 12. So I would still need to do the review. This is on day 1. We're going to review the large sound cards just for vowels. And then remind them about the gray letters being silent, that they're sleeping. So that takes about, for a 10-minute chunk, you're going to make the plan to make a chocolate pudding pie, scaffold when you need with the challenge words. I used to give the kids my dry erase markers and let them go draw boxes around the frequently used words as well as keywords. And then again, going back with distancing questions, have you ever tried pie? What kind of pie have you tried? And there's 2 kinds of pies people love to eat at Thanksgiving. Can you name them? And then I made a little note that you're going to keep a copy of that plan you made because you're going to use it for the next day's language activity. So again, a lot of it's the same stuff, but it just kind of ups the ante when it comes to distancing questions. And again, you're asking them, you're not telling them what the words are they're working on. They are actually going to go highlight and draw a box around them. So they're more active in these activities and lessons, I think. And then for their book, they're going to be adding the I to their practice book. And they can practice, depending on how much time you have, you could practice different ones. And so that lesson, all in all, is about 25 minutes. So it even gives you like a 5-minute cushion. Okay, next slide. Okay, this one I went all the way up to Unit 20, Lesson 80, Day 4. So on this one, you're going to be reviewing the keywords sock, socks, cut, and kite. And then for the keyword activity, you're using the vocabulary picture cards to retell the keyword story. And you're going to talk about how Pete had to search for a sock. So again, going along with the distancing questions, you're going to think of other times they've had to search. So you might give them clues like ship, gold, Captain Hook, pirates. Bringing in different ways that people have had to search for things until they can think of the words treasure and map. And then they're going to find a treasure map in the box. So you're going to have the students read the clues to find the treasure. Again, I used to put candy, gummy snacks, toys in the last place for them to find to make it a little bit more exciting. And another thing I always did was, instead of practicing, if you're trying to tear this up for older kids and itinerant, so the keyword cards that you're used to, And it's saying the connection's unstable again. And we're back. So the keyword cards are the ones that you use within our lessons, the mystical stories and different things. The secondary keyword cards that you're given are ones that aren't necessarily taught within the lessons. They're extras. So I would use those more often with to challenge my kids, since they don't relate back to the story that they read. They're going to have to use the skills they've learned to decode those secondary keyword cards. So all in all, that lesson is going to take about 30 minutes. Next slide. Again, it would have taken me a really like days worth if I went through each lesson. So I wanted to just highlight some. And just to give you examples that there are ways to tier up your lessons by replacing target words with the challenge words, using the secondary keyword cards instead of the primary from the lessons. Again, you have the luxury of manipulating your materials. So you can take things out you don't think are necessary and replace them with higher level things, or targets that you have in your IEPs with your kids. The only thing I would suggest is not to mess up the introduction of a keyword with the keyword blending and decoding. Like those three stay together. And add movement. And check out the lessons on the link.
So yeah, they're here at the link, but I also, again, posted them in the base camp for anybody just to make it a little easier to get to it. But yeah, that's great information. I know that was one of the most popular questions I received, were itinerant teachers asking what to do. And we actually had some parent-infant advisors attend with some of the kids in the home with the parents, and those would be great to do with the parents, I think, too.
Oh, yeah.
And being able to show them how to, do that language immersion even in the home.
Yeah, I mean, it's hard at first because, that's the thing. Like, the people that were needing the most help are the ones that were there at the trainings or they just started implementing it. And so it's like once you've had like 2 or 3 years under your belt, it's super easy to just go in and be like, okay, I can take that out. I can swap it out with this. But I know it's harder in the beginning. So that's why I was trying to give a few examples you can add in for tiering up, tiering down. And then if you are itinerant, it's hard to figure out what things you can take out without messing with the validity of the actual lesson. Yeah. So that's what's trying to help you out a little bit.
And maybe even some of those weeks where you just had so much stuff going on that you can't get through the whole thing because they're asking you to do all this testing. I know even kindergarten now, we have those progress monitoring times for kindergarten where they have to submit that state data. And maybe you're just so overwhelmed with everything, or it's Christmas time and there's been that many pullouts for Christmas this and parent awards and the special party for this and that you can't quite get to everything. It might be those weeks you go to the shorter lessons.
Right. And if you look at those lessons and you compare them to the ones in the manual, you'll see that the subject matter is the same. But again, I was trying to help a lot of the itinerant teachers and a lot of, doing this program, we've got bins and bins of materials, and just the ones that for the fun activities take up a lot of space. So you'll see that I kind of tweaked some of the materials for smaller, easier things that will still hit the targets, and just took out some of the cutesier things. And some of the cutesier activities are replaced with kind of more mature subjects and things.
Yeah. So that led up to questions. So again, Julie's available and via Basecamp if anybody has any questions or wants any help with anything in particular, until the end of the school year. So.
Yep. Right, but I am open to y'all through June. If you come up with if you're coming across some issue or concern or question, please send it to Basecamp or email myself and Kara, and we'll help you.
Very good.
Give her 2 cents.
Definitely. Well, I really appreciate you doing this refresher webinar for us. I know it's hard to find that perfect time to get everybody there, but I have had requests to watch this after the fact, which is perfectly fine.
This is perfect.
Yeah. So, and I want to thank Brooke for providing captions for us. And we've had ACS for all 4 sessions to provide those captions, and that for accessibility, I really appreciate it. So go ahead and stop the recording.